What's going on in the mind of a soldier when they step into the chaos of war? The sights, the sounds, the constant tension. How does anyone process such overwhelming trauma? We often hear stories of bravery, courage, and strength, but there's a side to war that isn't so easily seen. The psychological toll that war takes on soldiers is real, and it's something that isn't often discussed in detail. So, have you ever wondered how soldiers cope with the unimaginable stress and trauma they face in combat? How do they keep going, day after day, even when everything around them is falling apart? If this question has been on your mind, then you're in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of war, exploring how soldiers cope with the trauma they experience and the emotional toll that stays with them long after the battle ends. Before we get into it, make sure to like this video, hit that bell icon for notifications, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more important insights on topics like this one. Let's get started. War is brutal. We've all heard it, seen it, read about it. But what happens to a soldier's mind during and after the battle? It's something we don't often stop to think about. For soldiers on the front lines, every single day is a test of endurance, physically, emotionally, and mentally. The stress they face can be overwhelming, and when the dust settles, the effects can last far longer than anyone anticipates. One of the most common psychological reactions to the trauma of war is something called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. You've probably heard of it, but do you really understand what it means for those who suffer from it? PTSD is a mental health condition that occurs after someone experiences or witnesses a life-threatening event. And for soldiers, war can be the ultimate trigger. Imagine witnessing an explosion, the loss of comrades, or being in constant fear for your own life. For soldiers, PTSD doesn't just go away when the war is over. The memories, the flashbacks, the nightmares, these can haunt them for years, sometimes even decades. The psychological scars of war can be just as deep as the physical wounds, but because they aren't visible, they often get overlooked or misunderstood. But here's the thing. PTSD isn't the only way that soldiers cope with trauma. In fact, not every soldier who experiences combat will develop PTSD. Some soldiers have learned to manage their emotions and trauma in other ways. Some may compartmentalize their feelings, pushing them down to survive the intensity of combat. They might focus solely on the mission, blocking out everything else. It's a coping mechanism that allows them to function in the chaos of war, but it can come at a cost. Eventually, all those emotions have to surface, and when they do, it can be difficult for soldiers to process them in a healthy way. Other soldiers might use humor to cope with the trauma of war. It may sound strange, but for many, laughter becomes a shield. By making light of dire situations, soldiers find a way to keep their spirits up, even in the most unimaginable circumstances. Humor becomes a way to relieve the tension, to break the psychological weight that comes with constant stress. It's not about making fun of the situation. It's a survival mechanism. Laughter is a way to reclaim some control in an environment where control feels impossible. And while it might seem like an odd way to cope, it's actually quite common in combat zones, where soldiers find comfort in joking around with each other, even as they face life-or-death situations. Then there's the concept of camaraderie. One of the most profound ways soldiers cope with trauma is by relying on each other. The bond between soldiers is often described as one of the strongest relationships a person can have. They share everything: the fear, the danger, the losses. They understand each other in ways that no one else can. This sense of brotherhood becomes a lifeline. When a soldier loses a friend or comrade, the grief is unbearable, but having a fellow soldier to lean on can help ease that burden, even if just for a moment. The camaraderie gives soldiers the strength to keep going, even when the weight of their emotions seems unbearable. However, while camaraderie can help soldiers cope in the short term, it's not always enough. The mental and emotional toll of war can build up over time, and many soldiers begin to suffer from what's known as moral injury. This concept refers to the deep emotional and psychological pain that comes from actions or experiences that go against a soldier's moral or ethical beliefs. For example, if a soldier is forced to take an action that leads to civilian casualties, or if they experience the brutality of war firsthand, they might feel an overwhelming sense of guilt or shame. This kind of trauma is particularly challenging because it's not just about the horrors of war. It's about the inner conflict between what a soldier has been trained to do and what they believe is right. Moral injury can lead to feelings of anger, self-blame, and isolation, making it even harder for soldiers to heal. As we dive deeper into the psychology of war, it's important to also address how soldiers process grief. The loss of comrades is a devastating experience for any soldier. In battle, soldiers often form close-knit relationships, and losing someone they've shared so much with can leave a deep emotional scar. The grief that comes with such a loss isn't something that can be easily overcome, and for many soldiers it lingers long after the conflict ends. Some soldiers might suppress their grief, trying to push it down in order to focus on the mission or survive. Others may seek solace in the memories of their fallen comrades, holding on to the connection they shared even after death. But this grief can manifest in ways that make it hard to move forward. Survivor's guilt is common among soldiers who make it through combat, wondering why they were able to survive when others didn't. It's also important to highlight the growing awareness of the psychological impact of war in today's military culture. In recent years, there has been a push to acknowledge the mental health challenges that soldiers face, especially when it comes to PTSD and moral injury. Programs are being developed to help soldiers cope with their trauma in healthier ways. There's been a shift towards more comprehensive mental health support, with counseling and therapy becoming more widely available. But even with this progress, stigma still exists. For many soldiers, asking for help feels like a sign of weakness, especially in environments that prize toughness and resilience. Breaking down this stigma is essential to ensuring that soldiers have the support they need to cope with the psychological aftermath of war. So, how do soldiers ultimately heal from the trauma they experience? It's different for everyone. Some soldiers find peace through therapy or counseling. Others may turn to creative outlets like writing, painting, or music to express their feelings. Some may reconnect with family and friends, seeking the comfort of familiar relationships to help them reintegrate into civilian life. But one of the most important factors in healing is time. The trauma of war doesn't go away overnight. It's a long and difficult journey, and soldiers need the support of their communities to help them navigate it. War changes people. The psychological scars it leaves can last a lifetime, but with the right support, soldiers can learn to cope, heal, and rebuild their lives. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. If you found this topic insightful and want to learn more about the psychology of war and how soldiers deal with trauma, don't forget to like this video, hit that bell icon to get notifications, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. There's so much more to uncover, and you don't want to miss out on the conversation.